All right, welcome back, everybody. Well, if you've lived in this province for any amount of time, certainly you've heard the word or heard about the organization, Sask. But, you know, unless you're intimately involved with that organization, you probably, I don't know what's going on. Sask, they must be in charge of sport. Well, loosely, yeah, but and a whole lot more. And now you can find out for yourself because there's a new book out, hot off the press, as it were, and it's called, I want to make sure I get the title right, Giving Us a Sporting Chance, the Story of Sask. Here to talk about that, we have the author of said book. That, of course, is Lynn Gidluck of Regina, and joining Lynn is pretty much Mr. Everything over the years with Sask. Been there, done it all, past president, intimately involved in the baseball community. Cas Pielak is here. Lynn, we'll start with you. The most obvious opening question in the history of opening questions when talking about a book is, where did the idea come from? Who decided it was a good time or a good idea to do a book?
Well, we really have to give a lot of credit, Pete, to another past president called Ian Cook. Ian Cook came from the sporting world himself and was convinced to sit on the Sask Sport Board of Directors one year. And like many people in the sport community, you know, he didn't really know what Sask Sport was all about. In the first little while that he was sitting around that table, he came to realize, well, this isn't a government organization. This is, you know, an organization that's pretty much the center of everything to do with sport. He found out that not only did they receive funding from lotteries, but they ran the lottery. And he started talking to other past presidents and others that, you know, told him interesting stories about Sask Sport and, you know, how it really came in to be in charge of the lotteries, and he thought there was a good story there. So it took quite a while for him to convince the board of directors and the staff at Sask Sport that they should write the book.
Is that a Saskatchewan thing? Is that a humility of Saskatchewan thing? You would think it's a no-brainer. Well, it's a great organization. It's unique in many ways, and we'll get to that, but why wouldn't you write a book? But as you mentioned, there's some arm twisting involved in it.
Well, I think it's more the case that, you know, this is an organization that does a lot of things for a lot of people, and they're a sport organization. They, you know, history really isn't their thing. They just quietly go along and do their thing, right?
That's right. Yeah, I think that's very true, and I think the other thing is that anytime a volunteer organization looks at anything, we look at costs and everything else. And that comes into it, and now you got to twist some arms and get it done, and Ian did it, and that was great. It was Ian, Dawn, and Phyllis Bogany, and they just did it up, and Lynn did the rest.
Cass, you get the easy question. What does Sask Sport do?
Oh, Sask Sport really does the funding for all the provincial organizations. They provide the funding. That is their main goal. But they also are involved with their Aboriginals, with everything. They have from programming, kids sport. It's everything in sport. And also they're involved in culture and recreation, where we found them also through this beautiful lottery that we got started.
Now, in doing the research, I imagine you heard some great stories. Do any stick out in terms of particularly interesting and or bizarre? Because we're all about the bizarre, obviously.
The bizarre. Well, I have to say that I met a lot of phenomenal people, and one of them, of course, is Mr. Pielak.
He doesn't fall into the bizarre at all.
Well, you know, that's, I guess, some could be debatable, but, you know, Cas was one of the first people I met when I was doing the interviews for the book. As some people might know, he is one of he's aged quite well, obviously, but is Sask Sport's oldest kind of president. You know, was it 1974, 75? He was the third president. The first two presidents have sadly passed away. But if it hadn't been for Cas and Joe Kanuka, who was very involved in football Saskatchewan, for agreeing to do a promissory note to run the first lottery, put their own money on the lines to demonstrate to the government that they could run lotteries, we wouldn't have the system we have. So Cas can tell you that story. I think it's a pretty interesting one.
Absolutely.
Well, what happened really is Bill Clark, one of the people that really started this, was involved with the Park of Culture and Youth. And just to give you a little bit of sample of this thing is, what happened is Bill and Joe came out of a meeting where Joe was talking to them about what Sask Sport should be doing. And he was on the funding thing, and so was I. So Joe came out and he says to me, in front of Bill, what do you want from Sask Sport? I said, well, I don't want them in my damn programming. I want them to be funding, period. Because funding is a fundamental thing that every sport body needed. It's one of the hardest things there is. So then came the license and the $100,000. And Lynn is, she called me an old guy in here, but that's okay. She's being nicer today. But with the $100,000, I was in the Atlantic provinces for a baseball meeting, naturally. But I was also president of Sask Sport. So Joe phones me and he says, okay, here's the banker and stuff, and wants to talk to you. And I said, well, what does he want? And he says, well, all he wants is for you to sign a promissory note for $100,000. That's all,
In the 70s, that's not much money at all.
And I've got nothing. Hey, I've got a mortgage on the house. And, and anyway, the bank gave us the money, and there is a little bit of a story to this that I never did tell my wife until about a year later, when everything started going good. Hey, that's a good time. And then she said to me, well, what did you put up for assets? We got nothing. I said, you and my son.
Perfect.
Well, that put me on the Chesterfield for approximately 1 month.
That's not bad. I would have thought longer.
Yeah, so that was pretty good.
Now, Lynn, Sask Sport is unique, and in some ways it's unique in the world. Can you explain that for us in terms of the way it operates and what it does?
Well, the reason it's unique in terms the way it funds sport, culture, and recreation, I have, as part of my research, I was doing this at the same time I was doing my PhD dissertation. So that project focused just on the lotteries. And so I investigated all 176 countries in the world to see what they did for lotteries. And I can, without a doubt, tell you that the way Saskatchewan uses its lottery funds is completely unique. Most other places, it's a government organization that runs the lottery. And also, it's civil servants that would distribute the funds that come from that if they decide, or else it'll go just directly into the government general revenues. Instead, what Saskatchewan decided to do, and this is a Saskatchewan thing, is that they decided to push it out into the communities. So what makes it unique is that it's ordinary citizens, and Ian Cook doesn't like when I use the word ordinary, because he says, Saskatchewan people, and especially Saskatchewan sport people, aren't really ordinary. And he's right to a certain extent. But what I mean by that is just regular, everyday people like Cas, who are out helping Baseball Saskatchewan and, amateur sport volunteers, and people like you, Pete, with your kind of coaching for, football, right? Regular people have a much more greater ability to get involved and develop the policy and develop the programs and really those accountability mechanisms and everything. So, so many government programs just don't make any sense, right? There's so much paperwork and administrative stuff and rigmarole involved. When you get the volunteers and the people that really understand what the money's needed for, it just becomes a much more streamlined and smooth system.
Well, I think that the programming because these people know their own sport, and whereas if you get into a bureaucracy and the guy knows maybe football, but he doesn't know nothing about baseball or hockey or anything else, and therefore the programs don't fit. I think that's the real uniqueness of this whole program, and I think that's why it's been so successful.
Awesome. I launched it with an obvious opening question, very obvious closing question. Where do folks get their copies?
Well, the book was published by Cotto Books, so you can just go to their website and order it online. Or I believe the good folks at Sask Sport have some at their front desk where you can buy copies. I believe Kato has a distribution system as well, so hopefully we'll see it in some of the bookstores soon.
Yeah, Sask Sport too, you can just email it in or go online and they'll sure send them out to you. I was just on both here and in Saskatoon, and the Saskatchewan Hall of Fame, Lynn, I think
Yeah.
they've also got them over there, so.
Perfect.
But the easiest way is, if you're a little lazy, just phone Sask Sport and they'll mail it out to you.
And you'll also know that when you're purchasing a copy that it's making a donation to kids sports, so less fortunate children in our community can take part in sports.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much for doing this. Best of luck with this thing. Hopefully it does raise a schwack of money for kids sport. Great cause. Thank you. Lynn Gidluck, Cas Pielak. Folks, the book is called Giving Us a Sporting Chance, the story of Sask Sport. Get yours. It's very interesting. I'm well into it. Haven't finished it yet, but it's a great read and an easy read as well. Stick around. Lots more coming up.
Hockey night in Saskatchewan.